Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average pun-making swearwolf that loves to explore the spookier things in life.
Hey everybody, I'm John Thomas, paranormal investigator, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our spiritual tribe? Today we'll be talking about Toltec Shamanism and other metaphysical gifts with our guest, Dominique Isis. Welcome, Dominique.
Thank you. Hello. I'm so happy to be here today.
We are excited to have you on.
Yay.
So I know you and I have been like messaging back and forth for over a year now, right?
I
Where
know.
it's just like, hey, you should come on the show. And we finally did it. We coordinated. Yay,
I
go
know.
us.
Yay. Perfect divine timing, right?
Yes. And I feel like you're exactly right. There is a divine timing going on. This is the moment that we needed to do it. For those that don't know, I mean, Dominique and I have known each other longer than a year. We've been trying to get her on the show, just getting our schedules aligned for about a year. But, and it's that sounded weird, like I'm throwing it on you. I'm not. We have been figuring it out. But I've actually known you. Gosh, how long have I known you now?
Remember when I used to do aerial? Like I was 23 or 24, I think.
Yeah, like that was years and years and years ago because that was before.
Like 6, 7 years ago.
Whoa, we've known each other that long. We're amazing.
It only took 6 years. What?
Yay. Well, the podcast wasn't around that long, but
Yeah, that's true.
it was really cool. I will say that it was really cool to see your journey because when I met you, I remember you would come in and you were just like, I just want to try this. I want to try it. And I felt like the moment I met you and you were like my student, I was just like, you're amazing. You had the nicest energy. It was so kind and welcoming. And I just wanted to hug you. I'm like, you're family to me. Uh, so it was just like, you're coming back to class, right? You're like, yes, Ashley. And I'm like, because you're family, you have to come.
Yes, I felt that way with you like right away, actually, where I was like, I remember entering class and talking about you shortly after and just knowing, like, just having a knowing of, I'm going to know this girl probably for a while, like a long time.
Yay! And look, it was true.
Yeah.
Uh, but I know back then I wasn't as outwardly vocal about like what people call the metaphysical world. To some, it's just spiritual, right? It's not so much like this is metaphysical. It's just this is spiritual. I wasn't as vocal about it. I was still very connected at that point to my own journey with that stuff, but I wasn't wearing it like a flag. And now here we are. But I was so inspired by watching you on your journey because you're like, I'm going to go to this school and I'm going to train in medicine and just like it was awesome. Can you tell us about your journey? I don't want to tell it for you. This is your story. Like, when did you decide to take that step and go into that?
Gosh. Okay. Um, Let me give a background. I, would say I had my spiritual awakening of just coming to the realization that everything's connected, that we're not separate of nature, that we're made actually of all the elements that we see and we use every day when I was 18. So that's when that happened, is entering massage school started to give me a really good foundation and understanding that we are not just a physical body, but we have 4 bodies, right? An emotional body, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. And when we started talking about how all of these bodies are connected and how one affects the other in something like massage therapy school, I was like blown away and also had this like moment where I felt, oh my God, I've known this. I've known this my whole life somehow, but now it's like in my face and I'm seeing it differently from a different level of awareness. So my journey kind of started then, and entering massage school. Unfortunately and fortunately, I do come from like a very harsh background, like grew up Catholic. I've had psychic sight since I was 3 years old. I was told I was too sensitive. I had parents, unfortunately, that were really religious. So you can imagine telling my mom at 3 years old, hey, mom, there's ghosts in my room and I see green portals every night that I go to bed, is not something that my mom really wanted to nurture or understand, because she was a psychotherapist. So she was coming from a very westernized background of clinical diagnosis. So when I was speaking to my mom about these things when I was that young, she was seeing it as, oh my God, my child's abused and she's having like schizophrenia, like developing, and, clinically putting a label to it, because she, deep down, I think my mom has those gifts. Actually, I know that my mom has the same gifts I do, and that's where they come from. But her background and her conditioning just didn't allow her to really accept that growing up. So I came from a family that was really abusive physically and emotionally and mentally. And that journey of being so suppressed, actually, when I was 20 years old, it's really a sad story, but I wanted to commit suicide because I just felt so different, right? And I'm like, what's wrong with me? If this isn't real, then what am I doing here? And that journey of like wanting to commit suicide and being so suppressed and repressed and being in a really abusive household and a religious one on that, they just use a lot of guilt and shame. And luckily, my journey through massage school started to make me feel like, oh my gosh, I'm totally not alone in this journey. And this world really is real. And my journey then took me to meditation and beginning to study the arts of Buddhist philosophy. And my hunger just went from there. And I went to a 10-day retreat called Vipassana Retreat. And that was the day that everything in my life made sense. I started to really understand myself, and it really healed me in a way that I never expected. I came out of that retreat and I had a passion for life, whereas right before then, I didn't even want to be here. So
That is so powerful. I appreciate you, first of all, sharing that. That's super vulnerable. Thank you for just even being willing to give that much, because a lot of times I feel like people don't find that, right? They don't find that connection, like, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one experiencing that. And they live that suppression and that rejection. And that's hard. It's hard being rejected by your core group,
yeah,
by the people that you're told are supposed to love you and support you and be there for you. That's really, it's heartbreaking. And anybody that's ever experienced that from their family unit, whether it be on a spiritual, metaphysical level, or for their preferences in life, like, that's so big. And the fact that you found your community, you found your tribe that allowed you to love yourself, like, that's I love that so much. um that's what I love about these podcasts, honestly, because people are able to find more and more they're not alone. Whether it be about metaphysical, spiritual, or other topics, like, people are starting to find those communities and those pockets that say, I love you for who you are. I love you exactly as you are, and I support you on your journey. So, wow. I didn't know all of that.
yeah, yeah. It was necessary. I say fortunately and unfortunately, right? Because it's so unfortunate, and it's not okay what I've been through, to have to endure like that much abuse. And I've come to accept that those things are what has shaped and made me like who I am today. And what I learned through that was just how resilient I really am, and how being different is not a bad thing. It's unique, and it's like what makes you special, right? Like being sensitive. And I say this a lot, I talk about this a lot with my clients, is your sensitivities are your greatest superpower. Your vulnerabilities are your true gift and strength. Hiding is really the opposite of it. Not claiming your power and speaking out is not a gift. Your gift is being able to use those vulnerable stories to talk about your journey and and where you've been and what you've learned, because these are those stepping stones that make you who you are, and along the way other people will resonate with that story. And yeah, like maybe your story can touch the heart of someone else and make them realize like, oh my god, I too sense and feel and see things, and man, I've been thinking I'm crazy, when it's the opposite.
Well, and for you, you've got, you had the added level of someone who has a traditional, the psychotherapy background, which has to be extra hard. And I actually want to touch on that for a moment because I saw something uh, on TikTok that really angered me the other day. And it takes a lot for me to just come across something that angers me. But there was someone who was doing a live and she was talking about specifically about the empath individuals with empath gifts, and her whole stance was that being an empath isn't real. It's actually a personality disorder that's manifesting, and we're trying to kind of misdirect from the empathic gifts, and it's really just a personality disorder that needs to be addressed through therapy. She's like, I used to think I was too, and I've learned over time that's a delusion. And the information that she was sharing to me was so harmful. It is absolutely detrimental. Talk about what empaths already go through as is pretty intense and tough. And then to tell an empath, actually, you have a personality disorder, you have a psychological disorder, like, no, who the heck are you? Whoa.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
that is so dangerous, and like,
yeah,
it's ostracizing. That's hurtful, throwing out very big claims like that to people that maybe are searching for answers. Even if you don't think it's real, throwing out a like a mental illness onto people, that's like, as a generalization, that's so harmful.
yeah. No, I'm glad that my daughter didn't have to see that. You know, when she was going through her stuff, when she realized that she can see and hear and all of that, the things that she was going through. So yeah, just if she had seen something like that back when she already thought she was schizophrenic, that would have made things a lot worse. So I'm glad that she didn't see anything like that and that I was around and able to tell her, no, you actually have gifts and let's see what we can do with them because it's special. It's, you know, it's going to help you out in the long run. So
Clearly, yeah, absolutely. And my response to that is ignorance is bliss. And, what you don't know until you do. And it's maybe an education piece that's missing, or not enough experience, not to like judge this person for saying that, if that's maybe her truth. But to me, like the way I receive that is feelings are a personality disorder. Having feelings is a mental disorder, but having feelings and knowing how to access them and use them to our advantage and healthily is like the core essence of connection in the first place. And what's like the root of community and friendship, and being healthy and having healthy patterns in our life to be able to set boundaries. Like, you can't really set boundaries with people or understand how to regulate your nervous system or be rooted in your body if you can't access your feelings. And the more you access your feelings and empathy, like the empathic person who feels so much, has a lot of sensitivity, and also feels the external world. Like, there are some that have it, I think, more than others, but it is developed, actually, what I have found. And I could be wrong, and maybe you guys have a different explanation to this, but I think the more you access your feelings and you begin to heal from your trauma, the more empathic you become.
No, absolutely. You're way more like in tune and balanced than I am, because I'm like, I'm angry. That's not cool. And you're like, well, we need to understand where she's coming from. And the key things that stood out, you're right. The key thing that stood out to me, she said, I used to think I was empathic. Here's what it actually is. To me, that sounds like a very big rejection of her gift, because it was overwhelming and there wasn't that structure, that support from a community, right? And that structure to say, here's how you can make it manageable. Here's how you can make it, like you said, a strength. It's not a weakness. Here's how we make it your strength. And I completely agree with you. I think gifts are like muscles, like anything else. The more you use them, the stronger they become and the more intuitive and connected you are with it. So
Yeah. And that's not to say that if I heard this person speaking that it wouldn't stir something up in me. I'm sure it would be like, whoa, right? But then I just have to come to that realization of like, okay, that's like where she's at on her journey. It's not for me to judge it, but it would tell me that um, when she starts healing that, she may have a different belief system in a couple years, maybe in a few months. But yeah, gifts is a really interesting topic in the spiritual community. As I hear a lot of people talk about gifts are the things that make you spiritual, and that's not true. It actually has nothing to do with spirituality at all, and has, a lot more to do with parts of who you are. And there's always more room to grow them, expand on them, and work with them in new, effective ways. And your gifts are just what make up your unique personality and energy. The way that I would see like the person who was born, like I'm going to talk about my husband. My husband is such a good soccer player. He doesn't have to train, he doesn't have to practice. He was just born kicking the ball since he was like 3 years old. And I see other people that are just equally as good as him, but it's taking them 10 years of practice to get as good, right? So when I talk about gifts, everybody has them, and some people are just naturally more innate in some of their gifts or ahead. Like, and when I say the word ahead, just means that more naturally gifted in that specific department, and there's still room to still improve and open yourself up to more.
yeah. And I think we've had someone on previously that also told us, your gifts are going to adapt with you over time. So maybe what you could do a few years ago, you may not access the same way a few years from now, because really, as long as you're connected to your intuition, they're going to manifest as you need them.
Yeah, 100%. It's like same with defense mechanisms, right? It's like we have specific defense mechanisms, like our ego. I hear a lot to kill the ego, destroy the ego. And I'm like, no, actually, you need your ego to survive. It is so necessary. We need to feed our ego appropriately and know that our ego is here to protect us. And those protection mechanisms are maybe currently really helping you because it's rooted in survival. But again, it's like as you go on your healing journey, it's not about killing the ego, but not allowing the ego to overtake your life or be what I call, like what I tell my students, I give them the analogy of like a car. The person driving the car, you don't want that to be your ego. You don't want your ego to be the one that's making every single decision. You want to realize you have it and notice it, but not give it all the power to feed it completely, that's what's ruling your existence.
I think we've talked to, I don't know if you remember this, John, but we talked to another individual who, to me, it almost sounds like the shadow work conversation we had too, where it's like you're not trying to
Yeah.
kill pieces of yourself. You're
Yeah.
trying to bring them back into balance and harmony
Right.
because they all serve a purpose. It may not be always the purpose that we use it for, or, when we react that it comes into play, but when we learn to bring it into that harmonious balance is when we can it does serve the purpose that maybe it is intended for. And I'm with you. I think sometimes people misunderstand what we mean when we say ego, and I think really ego is just like that mammalian survival brain. It's the brain that says me, because you need to survive. Ultimately, we can't survive if it's full altruistic, right? If we're fully connected to just a cosmic collective, because right now we are a human in this, experience. We're divine beings, but we're having a human experience. And what does that mean as a human? It means there are some basic truths. We have to have food. We have to have water. We have to have air. Like those are things we can't suddenly say, well, mind over matter. I learned to exist without it because I connected to something external to me. that's not this experience. And so I think sometimes, like you said, we forget that and we're like, oh, shed it all, get rid of it all. And it's like, but we can't, because we're still in this human experience. And that's honestly, to me, that's why I think we're here. We forget our purpose is to have the human experience as well as balance things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so many of these philosophies too, especially Buddhism, like which is where I started, is learning about meditation and awareness of my thoughts and my emotions and my feelings, just like even external feelings, like just bringing more awareness to even the subtleties that are more external. And it's all rooted in equilibrium. Like if you look at the core of a lot of these different spiritual, more metaphysical traditions, it's all rooted in awareness, acknowledging the spirit, understanding that we are a spirit the same way we are a physical body, and that it's all about balance and equilibrium and becoming one with all of nature and all of things. Like that's really like the way, my Toltec teacher actually would say, when you have really mastered one of these foundations, you've mastered all of them, because really all the traditions are all saying the exact same thing, but with just different language and from a different perspective with different words.
Absolutely. I like to think of it as just the body in general. Like, we, as dorky as it sounds, like we talk about in fitness, you can't spot train things, right? Like the body still has to be treated as a whole. So, if I'm like, I'm going to make my pinky very strong and I'm going to do like little weight curls. And so then I'm going to be the strongest, like balanced person. Like I'm forgetting my other fingers. I'm forgetting my hair, my face, my feet, my, like all of our bodies, our physical, spiritual, energetic, they all have to be cared for, because that is where, to me, the balance comes from. Now, you mentioned Toltec teacher. Now, can you tell us what Toltec shamanism is? You like the segue?
Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to do my best, because a lot of different literatures will say different things. So I just want to name here, for anybody who does know anything about Toltec philosophy, I'm coming from my teacher, who carries the lineage in his blood, whose actual ancestors come from the Toltec civilization, dated all the way back in his ancestry. And I'm also coming from experience in being in it and teaching it and working with the mysteries of the universe. So that's my perspective. That's where I'm coming from. Because if you were to Google it, you're not going to find a lot of these things, because scripture has really been lost over time. And a lot of things that Google says is also very, very inaccurate to the true essence of what Toltec shamanism is. So it started roughly around 600 AD. Now, again, I'm saying that roughly. It's an ancient civilization that predates the Mayans and the Aztecs. And a lot of the Mayans and Aztecs actually have learned quite a bit of their tools from the Toltecs, but Toltecs have been really lost in history. And what is talked about a lot in shamanism is like the Incan tribes and the Aztec tribes and the Mayans. Like that's talked about a lot. The Toltecas, which is how you would say it in Spanish, is not really mentioned, I think, enough. But it's starting to come back now, which is perfect, because the planet really could use these ancient techniques, as it really is the basis for the cosmology of the universe. So what it's rooted in, the foundation of Toltec shamanism, is rooted in the mathematics or cosmology of the universe. It's how to interpret the language of the universe. And when I say the universe, I mean everything that makes up everything: the stars, space, nature, ourselves, and our relationship to it. And they believe that the only certainty, the only thing that we're certain of, is death. And that is where it is a reflection and connection, like the way that they heal, the way they use the healing system is through reflection and connection to nature. And if you think about that, That's like kind of the root of a lot of philosophies, right? Connection of silence, connection to yourself, of being in silence and allowing yourself to really hear your own thoughts and understand your own human conditioning. Shamanism, we know, is the medical works of a shaman is to understand illness from the perspective of the spirit. So we know that a lot of shamans use, and not every Toltec is a shaman. I want to also say that not every Toltec is a shaman. Toltecs are known to be dream interpreters. They interpret the dream realm and specifically use the dreaming realm to heal themselves. Because according to the philosophy, what happens in your dreams and what's going on in your subconscious is more accurate than what is going on in your human physical reality. And it's kind of fascinating. So if you think about it, all these philosophies talk about, and in somatic work, they talk about we need to reprogram the subconscious mind. But the dream realm is the subconscious mind. They live together. So if you think about how the Toltecs have been going about this from way back in ancient times, they really were onto something. They figured out it's the subconscious mind that's the dang thing we gotta work on. So let's focus on healing in the dreams. Why would we focus so much and work so hard to focus healing our traumas in our reality when it's the subconscious mind where the true work happens? So they're dream interpreters. They're the masters of the dream. They know how to use the dreams to heal. They use a lot of astral projection techniques, and lucid dreaming is a really big part of Toltec philosophy. So that's really the true philosophy. Now, I walk a shamanic path, so I'm rooted in the philosophy of the Tolteca. That's what my soul, I think, what I've come to realize is, I think my soul is that, and that's why I chose it, because this path really has chosen me more than anything. It's just shown up this way. It's what I have been attracted to since I was very young, and the Toltecs, they're not a religion. So I also want to say that they're not a religion. They use a lot of quantum physics, what we call now quantum physics, to understand the language of the universe. So when you talk about particle relativity, for those that are really sciencey brain, it talks about how two particles that are connected, even if they were separated across time and space, they're still somehow connected. And that's what the Toltecs like live their truth by, is universal truths of everything's interconnected. So they're masters of the dream, they're master manipulators of energy, and they have a deep connection with the plants and the elements in the world around us because we're not separate from those things. We honor that we are made of those things. And we work with the elements and work with these energies in order to connect ourselves to them and essentially help heal our mental state, our emotional state, our physical state, because we're targeting the spirit. And we believe that as we target the spirit, the illnesses only become a physical manifestation when the spirit is sick or the spirit has an illness or a disease. So we really work on healing the spirit and focusing on the subconscious and the dreams to then make real life miracles, what some people would say miracles, happen on a physical human level.
When did you first come across the Toltec Foundation like teachings? Because, like you said, I Googled it. It is not like easy to research. I YouTubed, I listened to the Miguel brothers, and it's like, it is so. I tried, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to let her come and talk to us about it because I am going to get lost. And so,
Yeah.
how did you first come in contact with the Toltec teachings?
Yeah. So, you know how I said this path chose me? This is where sometimes I laugh at the universe and I'm like, okay, it makes sense. My first boyfriend I had, who helped me wake up to more of the spiritual stuff, when I was 18, 19 years old, when I went on that retreat, that Vipassana retreat, he was actually studying under a Toltec shamanic master teacher. And that was the first time I ever heard Toltec in my, like, ever, like, even heard that word. And I remember I was dating this person for a few years, and I was like, what does that mean? What is a Toltec? And the first spiritual book I ever picked up was from Don Miguel Ruiz, the Four
The
Agreements.
Four Agreements, yeah.
That was the first book I ever read, and I was like, wow, I have like goosebumps and I feel electric, and I'm reading this book, and somehow I feel that my soul like understands this and knows it, but I don't understand what any of this also means. That was the first time it was introduced in my life, understanding this, the language and the path, and what it means to be impeccable with your word, what it means to live in integrity, what it means to commune with the universe and the plants, and that we truly have all the answers within us. And why do we dream? Like, why do we have dreams every single night? Like, that's not something is talked about in school. Like, hey, by the way, guys, part of the human experience means you go to sleep for half your life and also have these vivid wild dreams. But we're never taught that these dreams actually play a significant role in our lives, because there's like a disconnect in Western school. Like, we know this. So that was the first time that it was introduced. And actually, I've always been attracted, again, right? Like, it's like the path chose me. I've always kind of been following and building upon that path with different philosophies and studies over the years. And then when it really came back in my life was just 4.5 years ago. I started, I don't know, like seeing it everywhere again. I started reading and expanding my knowledge with different books. A friend of mine actually started talking to me about this teacher, this person named Sergio Magaña. And she kept referencing him. This one day just at dinner, I was in Santa Fe. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was in Santa Fe visiting a girlfriend of mine. And she started being like, yeah, I'm studying Toltec philosophy. And I'm like, there's that word. There's that word again, Toltec. I'm like, yeah. I've heard this when I was like 19. Yeah, tell me more. I'm very interested. And she just kept like talking about it with me. And I said, I need this book and I need this teacher. So it was like just timed again in a way where I was ready, I think, right? I was ready to open myself up to that again, and go there again. And so I researched, who the heck is this Sergio Magaña? What are his teachings? What's this guy talking about? I need to make him my best friend. And then I started doing a ton of research, just listening to audiobooks, educating myself. And then I started studying under him. I started studying under him and also other books, and what the knowledge that my soul has, like my unique knowledge and wisdom that already is present. And working with this teacher, not only like I think opened up and the path revealed itself to me, but it allowed me to really tap into my own wisdom with it all. And I've actually now been able to remember so much more of who I am. And my teachings are a mixture of what I've learned, what I've experienced, what I've learned from my teacher directly from the lineage, honoring the lineage as it's been taught to me, but with my own wisdom and unique flavor of how I go about things and teach this philosophy.
Yeah, I think it's absorbing it in a way that works for you, in a way that speaks for you and enables your path. Someone I had talked to once said, you can read the same book 4 different times, in 4 different stages of your life, and different parts of the book will speak to you each time, even though it's the
Yeah,
same book, because it's what does your spirit need in that moment.
totally. I agree. And I think like for me, I don't know, when I was 19 and 20, I was kind of rebellious. I was ignorant. I was young. I had a lot of opinions, the way that most 19-year-olds are. Versus now, my level of awareness and consciousness and experiences of life, the way I receive these teachings. So I did go back to that book, The Four Agreements, because I was like, man, I'm going to read this book now with the level of awareness I have now and just see what happens. night and day different. It was as if I was picking up the book for the first time, because my understanding of it was on a completely different level, you know?
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So we have had people engaging in the chat while we've been talking, and I do want to let
Oh,
you know that when you shared your story at the beginning about your family, that resonated with quite a few of our viewers. They have been in that similar position and really could relate to that. They really appreciated that, and um,
that's beautiful.
yeah, it's been awesome to see how people are responding to the things you're saying. You're hitting a lot of home to a lot of people. So you uprooted your life to follow your journey. Am I allowed to talk about that?
Yes, please.
Okay. You
Please
uprooted
do.
your life to talk about your journey, and you took a leap of faith into the unknown in a way that, like, oh my gosh, I admire people that do that, because for me, I'm very much like I tiptoe out. Just like, is that safe? Is it? Is it? Okay, I'll go a little further. Is it safe? Like tiptoeing, onto the frozen lake. And you're like ice skating past, woo, adventure. So,
Yeah.
what inspired you to take that big leap of faith and going into that passionate spiritual journey?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with tiptoeing. I think that that is fine, girl. If you are tiptoeing, that's okay. That just means you're just like, all right, is it stable enough? Can I walk on this? And, like, I actually have a personality naturally that's a little bit more of the opposite, where I tend, in my past, a lot in my past, especially when I was much younger, I tend to be more, what is the word? Like free willed, where I would just kind of do things without thinking about it. Like
Impulsive?
impulsive, thank you. So I was kind of more that child where I was like that as a kid. My mom said that I was like that as a kid. Like, I would burn myself 3 or 4 times and you'd think you learn. And I'm still putting my whole hand on it because I'm like, how much further can it really burn? Yeah. So, like on accident, right? I'm like, no, I don't know. I've always really pushed boundaries. And I've seen, in my life growing up where I've really reeled that in. I've done a lot of trauma work around this, a lot of regulation, and I've really tapped into my intuition now. Whereas I would make decisions maybe in the past that's like a little more fear based, or of like FOMO, fear of missing out, and like needing to just go all in just for the sake of going all in. And because I kind of already have that a little bit in my personality, making such a drastic change in my life wasn't actually the scary part. Where I think for many people, that's the scary part, is change. For me, change doesn't scare me as much as I wanted to make sure that when I did this, that I'm actually listening to my intuition. And what is more scary is the unknown for me, where it's like, oh man, anything can happen. And that's a little bit more scary than uprooting my life. So how that came to be was a dream. I had a talking about being a master of dreams and working in the dreams. I've been working in the dreams for over 4 years now, and I was doing it like as a kid too. So I think I'm becoming more masterful now, right? As I start teaching this work, as I've really been doing it for so long. But I've always had that gift of astral travel and traveling in the dreams and lucid dreaming and talking to spirits in the dreams. And so it came in a dream, and that dream was very clear to me. It said, hey, it's time. And I was like, I wrote it in my journal the next day. I was like, it's time. And then I said, time for what? And I went to sleep again. The next day, I had the same dream. Hey, it's time. And then I started getting images of Costa Rica. And I said, oh, okay, cool. Well, the way I knew it was Costa Rica is a name came through and it was Dominical. And I had never heard of that name. I saw it clearly during a time I was traveling in the dreams. And I wrote it down. I started researching it, found out it's an area in Costa Rica, cute little beach town. And I had never been to Costa Rica. So I was like, okay, well, what about this dream? This dream? And over and over and over again, the message was just so loud. It was so clear. And actually, the more I was not listening, the more and more like signs were coming in, as again the universe is speaking through all these things. Like I entered a restaurant this one day, and the owner happens to be a Tico man from Costa Rica. And he's like, oh, I'm from Costa Rica. I own this coffee shop. And I'm like, this can't be a coincidence. It's so weird. And I finally started really piecing it all together and inquiring, okay, how would I go about this? Like, spirit is telling me to literally uproot my entire life and move. That's crazy. How do we make that happen realistically? How do I put that in human, right? I hear the spirit. How do I make that happen in human? And it was just very clear to me, like that gut pull, that intuition. I kept seeing it in the dreams every day. And it was like, you need to go there because you need to go out for more studies. You need to go learn. You need to experience. It's time to take your work remote and really trust yourself and trust me, the universe, trust me. And so I did. My husband and I asked my husband, I said, well, you are married to me, so
You knew what you were getting into.
You knew what you were getting. You knew what you signed up for. And I was like, are you okay with this? And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay, awesome. Let's do it. So we put a plan together. We sold everything and we moved out to Costa Rica, and we've been here for 9 months now.
That's so awesome. We've have a few questions that came in for you, so I'm going to put them in one at a time. So one of the questions is, who was the first person to help spark the path that you were on? Like, was there someone you came across, or was it you? Was it yourself to kind of spark that spiritual path?
Yeah. She is what I call my soul mother to this day. So I talked a little bit about my family. My mom and I have a relationship now, but we had a really rough one growing up. I felt very misunderstood. And again, my mom, though she criticized me so much and criticizes spirituality in general, is funny because I met this woman because of my mom. So funny how that happened. My father passed away when I was 18 in an accident. And that did a lot to my mom. And so my mom started searching for help. She started drinking a lot and was having a really hard time coping with his absence. And she came across this store. I don't think it's any longer I don't think it's here anymore, but it was called Que Linda, this store in La Crescenta, California, where I was born and raised. And my mom found this store from a newspaper clipping that talked about life coaching, crystal therapy, and oracle card readings. And my mom went to that store and she knew that I was all about those things. So she asked me, do you want to come with me? And I was like, yeah, I definitely do. And she took me there, but not long after, you can imagine, my mom is rooted in her Western self. She started to reject it. She started getting angry. Really, my mom was just getting triggered by everything I think she actually is, but was having a difficult time owning, that she left that store and actually told me, you can't ever go back there again. They're a cult. I was like, okay, that's extreme. I kept going anyway. And this woman, Victoria, who was the owner of the store, I kept meeting with her. In fact, then she gave me my first, not a job necessarily, as I was more like helping her with the store. I was like, I just want to help you because I just want to be in here. I feel at home here. And it was this woman who really was the first one that started to inspire my whole path. And, shortly right after, I ended up in massage therapy school.
Oh, I love that so much. You you found your way. But even I would like to know, your mom felt lost and she turned to the spiritual. It was only once she got inside of her head that she rejected it. But that natural propensity to lean in, like that was a natural reaction for her. And yeah, it's interesting. How has she embraced what you do now, or does she kind of not?
Well, she didn't until the last year. So, after all the alcoholism and abuse, she went in and out of homes trying to get help. My sister went into foster care at the time because, I was too young to take care of her. So she went into the system, but luckily we had a lot of support and friends. So a family friend is who took my sister in. During that time, my mom and I kind of started to lose connection, because I was just like, I can't like, I don't know how to handle all of this. And she ended up moving away actually after some time of battling her alcoholism, and finally being able to somewhat get sober, and through the court system was able to get my sister back. She ended up moving actually to the Dominican Republic, where she is now. And I did not, after that, like when she left, I kind of, for me back then, I closed the door. I was like, well, at this point, I kind of feel abandoned, right? Like that's how I was feeling back then. I felt really misunderstood, abandoned, but I still found my way. I made my family through connections. And it's not until like her and I started talking just probably 2 years ago, and maybe like 2.5 years ago, we started talking again. And it's now that, yes, she has, of course, told me everything I wanted to hear as a kid. She's told me now. But that's okay. That was part of the healing journey. She's been able to tell me, you got all your gifts. You get your gifts from me. I see that now. And I think that was a really big deal for my mom to actually say, hey, I do have these gifts and I pass some of these down to you.
Yeah, for her to own that out loud that's a big deal. That's huge. Did your sister share any of those at all, or is she on a different path?
She's probably, out of my family, probably the one that's more receptive to all of this stuff. Like, when I talk to her about it, she doesn't have a whole lot to say, but she does not reject it either. Like, she takes it in actually. And I can see her, like, her wheels spinning and like making sense of it. And I think in her soul it makes sense, but I think on an external basis in her experience, you know, she doesn't, I think, quite understand. But I think her soul does. So still, though, she's on a different path. Both my siblings, actually, my brother's in medical school, going to become a neurosurgeon, and my sister's on the path of becoming an FBI. So you can see, like, black sheep of the family here. I come from a family of all doctors, and I'm the only one rooted in like anything holistic.
You're not a black sheep. You're a diamond. And honestly, maybe she's just a tiptoer. Both of your siblings saw how your mom reacted to you, so I can imagine they're a little, they watch you like, oh, she's receptive to Dominique. Oh, she's tiptoeing, and they're kind of like watching that if they are, on that spiritual path or questioning that within themselves. But that's awesome that they have those different, very different careers. It just means you're all very unique. Another question was, have you talked to spirit or another person during your astral projections?
Yeah, so yeah, that's an interesting question. So when I have astral projected, the way astral projection, from my understanding, my experience, and I've studied a little bit of it too, there are things you can come across. And really what you're seeing a lot more of is definitely like what is the physical in the lens of a more esoteric, like invisible way. Like you can go through things, right? You can move around. And so it does feel very, like, the way that I would say, it feels very like translucent. Almost feels that everything we have right now feels really dense, but in that realm, everything, you see everything as it is, but what it's actually made of. So you see its particles and you see its vibration. When I've been in those states, I've definitely come across, yes, like what you would call spirits, or I've met my guides, or I've definitely also, when I travel in the dreams, I also use what's called a nawal. And so in the ancient tradition, we don't astral project or use lucid dreaming in ways that is our own physical human design, because there needs to be a sense of psychic protection. Because yes, there are things out there, and I don't know everything that's out there by any means and don't claim to, but we really do talk about safety, because this world can get a little complex if you don't have basic understanding of how it works. And the philosophy is rooted in using what's called your double to travel, where you use an animal to be able to travel, where yes, you'll see different realms, different spirits, different things in those places. And we use the animal as our like boundary, or our what other people would say psychic protection.
You know what's really interesting about you saying that? We had a guest from Belgium, so not in the Toltec shamanism realm, who talked about her astral travels as well. And she talked about how she has a different form, a different spiritual body form when she does those different travels. It is so fascinating when you have completely different cultures with very similar practices, right? Like they're doing the same thing. Maybe they're using different languages and different terminologies, but they're doing the same thing. That's, to me, that's very exciting. I don't know about you, John, but that's like super exciting when you see the commonalities, because it's like when
Yeah.
you see different people with different connections and different cultural backgrounds doing the same thing, it's like there's something there.
Yes, there's something there because every single tradition is seriously, it's saying the same thing in a different way. And that goes to tell me that, yeah, there is something very real about this, that these traditions and these ancient practices and civilizations are all experiencing the same thing, but using a different word for it. In my practice as a Toltec shamanic practitioner, not only do we use the dreams, but this is also how I use my psychic channel to as a medical intuitive, because I went through a lot of training as a medium, a psychic, a medical intuitive. All these things make sense now, right? Because the way that I actually will diagnose somebody is through the spirit. That's what I'm seeing, is through the spirit, and what we call, some people call it in Reiki, it's called distance healing and universal energy. We call it psychic surgery. And the psychic surgery, a lot of Mexican traditions, that's something I forgot to also say. The Toltecs is also a tradition rooted in Mexico. It comes from Mexico, but ancient Mexico. So a practitioner would be called a mexica. So that's what I would be called, as a mexica. And you absolutely don't need to be from Mexico or have any Mexican roots to be called a mexica. It's really in your soul. Because like, I'm not Mexican, I'm Cuban. And even though I have Latin in me, I have no roots in Mexico. All my roots are in Europe and Cuba, but my soul just knows that it's a mexica, which is the word for somebody who studies this philosophy. And so anyway, we do what's called psychic surgery. A lot of Mexican traditions call them espantos. Other Mayans and Incans call it imprints. I've heard other shamanic practitioners say thorns. Like I've heard people say the word thorns, but basically we're all saying the same thing. It's a distance healing that helps release the spirit of these blocks so that it brings equilibrium. There's that word, equilibrium, back into your body, where the body can then, when obstacles are removed, the body has an innate ability to heal, because those obstacles causing illness has now been removed.
Yeah, and it's so funny you have the different cultural background language used for it from the Latin American base, because we hear people in America that we've been talking to, or I should say people from the US that we've talked to, that call it quantum healing. They call it DNA healing. And you're all saying the same thing, right? You're working with the spiritual body and the energetic body on a level that is so external to like the hard sciences we know, right? And to get rid of those blockages, those thorns, those obstructions, and to really help individuals. And you don't have to be next to a person to do it. You can do it from a distance as long as you have that energetic connection, right?
Right, because it goes back to that particle of we're all interconnected. And so with Reiki, because I am a Reiki master as well, like I did learn Reiki when I was in massage school. It was actually part of my training, which I find very interesting to this day. I forgot about that like when I did go to massage therapy school, we had electives, and those electives was either essential oils, learning how to heal with essential oils, or Reiki. And I was like, oh yeah, give me the Reiki. Like essential oils is awesome, but like, what is this tradition? And Reiki was what I was introduced to first. And when you become a Reiki practitioner, the teacher puts what's called an attunement. They attune you to the symbols, to the frequency. The way we say it is, it's a transmission. We're saying the same thing. It's a transmission from teacher to student that happens. So every student that works with me is receiving the transmission of the lineage, and my teacher and my teacher's teacher and his whole background. That is the lineage. that you are being receiving these codes. You hear a lot of people say codes, but when I say codes, it just means that it's an attunement. Your frequency is starting to attune to these practices. And to me, as the teacher, because the Toltec tradition is also an oral tradition that's been passed down from teacher to student over a long period of time.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I find myself just absolutely fascinated when I hear like all these experiences. One person asks, when you look at a person in flesh, can you see what's wrong in their body, or or is it just reading the energy of the spirit?
That is such a good question. I would say with the training I have now, also coming from like being a massage therapist and understanding um, physiology and anatomy, and doing a lot of schooling in that department too, because I've always been, I one time wanted to have a major. My major was almost going to be biology because I was just so fascinated with how atoms and cells and all these things work, and I ended up becoming like a biologist of the universe is like kind of what I would call myself. So I would say with like the background I have, yes, I can see it very clearly what the person is carrying due to just having the background I have as an herbalist and going through herbal medicine school as well, understanding what I learned in massage therapy school, because we do carry our body a specific way. We Everything that our spirit is carrying, our human body carries in our tissues and our cells and the way we hold ourselves and walk and speak and do go about things. There is some obvious things that I can tell, but really where a lot of it really will come from knowing more specifics and details is, yes, through my channel of seeing the person's anatomy through the spirit of like through the lens of spirit, so to speak. So when I'm like psychically looking in, and then you have a conversation with the client and everything starts to kind of come out, and it all goes together. It's like I can see it, I can read it, and then once I interview my client, it's like it's confirmed.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one thing we want to kind of always remember is it's all connected. We want to separate out the physical body, the spiritual body, the inner, the emotional body. Like it's all still connected. I like what you said though, like using your different backgrounds, like because each background is going to help with that specific body, right? With the physical body, with the energetic body, with the mental, it all still is connected. That's the big key though, is it's all still connected. So if something's wrong with one, it's going to bleed into the other, and that because it's connected.
Yes, exactly. And I'm coming from a lens of my own like perception as well. I have to name that. I'm coming from my perception, and to really know is through getting to know the person through interview and making sure you are a clear channel to receive what's going on in their body. And that's where I really know what's going on, because I can perceive things with my eyes like, maybe that looks like that. And where it really will become revealed is through my medical intuition, intuitive reading. Still, again, it's coming through my filter. But when you are a very clear channel and you've done significant work on yourself to know when your ego is coming in and trying to tell you what's wrong with the person versus you're really hearing it from spirit, then that's different. Your ego has to be out of it to be a non-biased channel. Otherwise, then your mind is creating things and you're coming from your knowledge instead of really reading what's true for the person.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Because, we talked about in Toltec Shamanism, dreams are used for healing. Can you give me an example of how that is done?
Yes. Okay. So, and my students are learning this right now, the ones that are in my mentorship. I'll break it down scientifically. When we're in delta brain waves, when our brain is in delta, in Toltec philosophy, what that is the dream realm. When you're dreaming, you're in what's called delta. In meditation, you're trying to reach theta, and you're trying to reach something else. You're in beta when you're just like right now, we're just talking and hanging out. But delta is a very specific place in the brain where it happens naturally when we go to bed. So in the Toltec philosophy, in order to use the dreams, first of all, this is where the Toltec philosophy is truly a way of life, is you have to have a lot of energy, first of all. You have to have a lot of energy to access the dreams lucidly and be able to control it and do work in that area, which means you have to cut out toxic traits, behaviors, patterns, relationships in your life that are stealing your energy, for lack of a better word, or draining you. And this is where the Toltec work, a lot of my students will say, man, just like in the first week, what I hear from everybody is, holy moly, I realize actually how much power and energy I give to things I don't actually want to be doing. Why do I do that? Why do I go to that? Why do I talk to this person when I don't actually want to talk to this person? We do a lot of things we don't actually want to do, and this is bringing up a ton of awareness to know where these energy leaks are, because the philosophy says you need to have 4 to 7 times more energy and power to be able to go into the dream state and access it fully and with like full capability to do these energy healings. So we merge the realms. It's called dreaming while awake. So we learn through a lot of practices. You learn this about halfway through to the end of my mentorship, and then I have a level 2. And the level 2 is when we become what's called, it's the walk of, I call it the healer's path. The healer's path is, you now understand these foundations, you live by them, you honor yourself, your life is now is a prayer, and you become what's called a psychic surgeon. And now you can perform these healings on people very effectively. And when you perform the healings, you are in Delta. So what we do is we merge the dreaming realm, which is called, in the tonal is the physical body in the philosophy. The Nahual is the spiritual body. We see those as two energy bodies that naturally repel each other because, well, when we're awake, we're not dreaming. And then when we go to bed, now we're dreaming, we're not awake. So we call it dreaming while awake because we force and merge these two bodies, and we charge our energy with the elements. And that's what you're learning to do. You're learning how to take in the sun, take in the moon, work with the elements. And then actually, not just esoterically, you can't just be taking in all this energy, but actually looking at your life. This is transformation for people that are actually really ready to step up for themselves and look, okay, where in my life do I keep releasing so much energy, doing things, having conversations, having patterns that I'm losing so much of myself in? When you start to correct those things by letting go of what really does not call to you, you start to find that you have so much more energy for yourself, and therefore you have all of this energy to work with, where you merge these two realms that we use very specific techniques and over time building to get you there. And when you're in that state, truly in that state, this is where we do all our self healings. We pray, we do healings for other people. We heal the ancestors, because part of this work is healing and walking with your ancestors, healing 7 generations. And all of the work is done in that delta space, because that's where we merge the two realms together.
What does that healing look like in that delta state? Like, is that when we say we're healing, are we looking for thorns? Are we breathing through it, like breathwork? What exactly does that entail?
This is where the cosmology comes in. So we must use the mathematics of what we're connecting to through breath work. So, for example, when we start taking in the sun to build the tonal, which is to build the physical, we breathe in 13 because 13 is the number connected to the sun. We breathe in 13, out our mouths, the number 9, because the number 9 is connected to ancestral unconscious patterns. For example, I'm giving you an actual example of what a practice looks like. You breathe in 13, out 9, 13 times to connect to the sun, which we see every day, which we know is a part of us. And we do what's called drinking in the sun. So we actually take in the energy, not just by like having it hit us, but we actually, with our breath, will like suck in as if we're sucking in the energy of the sun and take it to different parts in our body that we're trying to create an effect or a healing, like a release of something by taking in these elements. And once we start filling our bodies with what's natural, what is our birthright to work with these elements, to work with the universe this way, when we perform healings for other people, it's different because, well, you can't take in the sun and then the other person is healed. It doesn't work like that. So it's a whole session where you're having your client breathe with you, and you use certain tools. We call them obsidian tools. We have an obsidian knife, and we have an obsidian, actually, I think I have it here with me, maybe, and I'll show it to you if I can find it. But it's like a stone. It's basically a stone, and we use the obsidian because the black obsidian releases negative energy. So we're using breath work, we're using the elements, we're using intention, we're using prayer, we're using visualization, and we perform healings from a distance and in person. When it's in person, your client is breathing those same techniques to get themselves mathematically connected to those elements with you as you do your healing on your client. And when we're looking at the what are we healing, we're looking at what's called the imprint. So we're looking at the spirit, we're looking at the energy and how the energy is being held in the person, and releasing those blocks, or what other people would call thorns, so that the body can actually heal and it makes a real life impact in your everyday life. So I'll give you an actual real thing that happened with a client. A client was suffering from severe inflammation on their right leg. They had, I think they fractured their foot. They were dealing with a lot of inflammation. Their doctor said they were going to need to get surgery on it. And she really didn't want to. And she was a student of mine. Going through the whole practice, doing all these practices, not only helped her reduce all the inflammation, she didn't have to get surgery, and she runs now. She started running again, where her doctors told her she most likely would never run again because she cannot put that impact on her foot. And all of these practices over time, and really working it and really being with it. And this doesn't mean that she also didn't work her diet. Of course, I always say it's not just, don't just rely on the energy. You have to make those life changes. You have to work with the diet. You have to work with, what are you consuming? Because it's not just about food, but social media, relationships. What are you consuming every day that is disempowering you? And the more and more you empower yourself and you work with these practices, she came out of my Toltec mentorship like a brand new woman. Like, she was like, I can walk, I can run, I feel like I'm getting my life back. And that's incredible. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, at its most basic level, for people that don't fully lean into this, you are teaching people to connect with themselves. I've always been an advocate of breath work, learning to control your breathing, because that impacts everything else, your heart, it's just your mental. It's so important. And if nothing else, you're helping people reconnect with themselves, trust themselves, and learn to balance within themselves. And I think that's so powerful. So, you talked about working with your clients and the different mentorships. So, I want to segue in. If people want to work with you, how can they work with you, Miss Dominique?
Yes. I would say I use my Instagram probably the most. My Instagram handle, where I do talk more about, like, I talk about these things on there. I do have a website that offers. I'm actually in the middle of converting my website completely to a new platform, so it's going construction right now. But I do have a current website where you can read just a little bit more about the lineage, my experience, and there are programs that I have on there, like a one-on-one mentorship, level 1 and 2. I have a way to get psychic readings with me one-on-one for those that are not like fully ready to step into mentorship, but want to still work with me in some sort of way and just feel it out for themselves. So that website and following me on Instagram is a really good way to kind of keep up with what I'm doing, and my email. And these are ways to contact me and move from there. I am currently developing a group experience, a group healing experience, a group course that is coming out this year. And I'm just currently working on it in the back end before I'm ready to launch.
You have something launching in a few weeks, right?
Yeah, I'm going to start talking about it basically in a few weeks. I'm going to be launching, basically just opening up enrollment for those that want to essentially go deeper into these things, go deeper into themselves, understand energy, learn how to work with it, and go through ancestral healing, and have like a healing experience with me.
Now, the thing I love about what you do, what you offer, is that for all of our different people that listen and tune into this, you offer your programs in more than one language, right?
Yes, I'm going to be offering these programs in Spanish as well for those that have a language barrier, because a lot of the root words is the Toltec tribal language that we're using, and we're using both, like, to understand the lineage. There's a frequency to the words, right? That's really like honoring the lineage as it is using these words and understanding them. So we use that language, and I'll have like an English container, and then I will be transferring and having a Spanish container for those that really want this work, are seeking it, but have a language barrier.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. I think it's very important because the irony of this is while Toltec shamanism is rooted in ancient Mexico, as like you said before, religion was introduced, these topics became taboo, they became against the church, and so unfortunately they were rejected. So a lot of people that are young Hispanic, whether it be young Mexican American or young, Latin American, you do still battle a bit of that ancient, or not ancient, but a bit of the traditional, like traditional Catholicism, traditional Christianity. So you providing that outlet for people with that Hispanic background, I think is really awesome because we're making our way back to our roots, but we're not there yet. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, and it's why I think like this work is so important right now, like on the planet, is for exactly what you just said, because the feminine is what's rising right now. And we see that with like women in politics, women owned businesses. It's kind of all women led right now. And not only that, but the shift, the paradigm shift is we are going back to our roots. We're going back to being rooted in community, in, harmony with the earth. A lot of people are like, you see it I'm seeing it because I live in Costa Rica, and we will be making our way to Argentina next. But I'm seeing it everywhere right now, where there are all of these communities, like incredible communities coming out, where they're living from and with the earth in community. And I think that's super beautiful. And that's what I think the new earth, or what you hear a lot in the spiritual community, new earth paradigm, the rise of the feminine, or the rise of consciousness, like what that all kind of just means to me is we're going back to our roots. We're going back to how we used to do things, and we're just using modern technology or more modern ways to do the same thing now.
We have a little bit more information on the technical sides, but
Yeah.
we still crave attaching to that spiritual side.
Yes. Yes.
Can you say what your Instagram handle is?
Yes. It's the sacred path, but in between the and sacred path is an underscore. And I'm pretty sure if you just research Dominique Isis, you'll probably also see me. So it's the underscore sacred path.
And I do want to put this out there for our listeners, viewers. Be very careful that you're following the right account because unfortunately, Dominique is so amazing that there are a lot of accounts that have been coming up that they are taking her content, and Dominique does not message you to offer you a reading. So if you do think I followed the right account, but you get a message saying, "Hey, love, I feel an energetic connection to you. I want to offer you a reading," wrong account, say no thank you, and that's not Dominique.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Block and report and get it out of there. That way the
Yeah.
real one can get, yeah, exactly.
Yes. No, please. I don't solicit people for my work. That's absolutely not in integrity with who I am, how I want to run my business, how I conduct myself. I think there's like 2 or 3 accounts out there, and you'll see it. Like they even spell the names, and the English in it is like not even grammatically correct. So just be cautious of that. My actual page, I'm trying to think of like a reference point, but they've also taken many of my photos, so there's not like a very good reference point. But either way, if you message me and you ask me, hey, is this really you? I will respond to you.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
And like Dominique said, it's the_sacred path. We will connect all of our social media on there on our pages so you know which one's the correct one. But yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrapped it up, Miss Dominique?
No, I feel so complete. This was so incredible. I'm so excited to share something that I am just so insanely passionate about with others and you and the world in this way. And it's just it's so humbling. It's incredible, and just thank you for this opportunity.
I'm really glad that we were able to get you on. I would love to have you on again if you ever want to come back on. This time flew by very quickly, and
It
I've
did.
missed you.
I've missed you too. And you and I need to connect further, outside the realms of Instagram and
I'm just
YouTube.
gonna call you.
Yeah, just call me. We'll chat, and it'd be such an honor to be on your podcast again down the road when I start hopefully hosting retreats.
How awesome. Thank you so much for coming
Thank you
on.
so much.
All right, John Thomas, you want to bring us home?
Yes, I do. Thank you again. This has been amazing. I've learned a lot, and yeah, hopefully everybody else does. And like we said earlier, timing was definitely off for you guys before to come on here, and I think this was probably the perfect time for everything, for everybody. Everything happens for a reason, so
Yeah.
that's how I see it. Yeah,
On my end, it's 2:22 right now. 222. This is a magical
there you
number.
go.
So hey, we're right on time.
Hey, there you go. That works. And thank you to all of our listeners who are listening to this. I'm your host, John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And if you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And like always, if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss one amazing moment.
Until next time.